How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this second iteration of the Crow Canyon application webinar series. My name's Ryan. I'll be hosting the onboarding demo today. Goofy little picture mid-screen, that's me. So yeah, again, thanks for coming, thanks for joining. We're gonna try and keep this short and sweet. You know, I know it's a lot of folks' lunch hours or just post-lunch hours, so we're gonna try and keep this to about half an hour. Open it up to questions afterwards. But first, we're just going to do a quick overview of who we are, who Crow Canyon is and what we do with SharePoint, specifically SharePoint applications. So we've been around since like 1999, and we've been building on top of SharePoint really for like the last 12 years or so. And we've had this onboarding application for quite some time. So it's grown with us and it's really matured. It's really matured as the company's grown. So this application works both in on-premise as well as online. So if you're running in either or, you have the opportunity to use it in both those environments. And really, Crow Canyon has two sides of what we do. We have our out-of-the-box applications, the one, the onboarding application we're covering today. And then the other side is our Nitro Studio. What the Nitro Studio is, it's a set of tools that we use to run our applications on. So it's a forms tool, it's a workflow tool, it's a reporting tool, these little different pieces that go into our applications. And what's nice is that we give you the keys to the car in the sense of, hey, we can go in and make changes to these applications after the fact. I mean, very rarely are two companies have the same onboarding application, right? Very rarely are they on the same page in terms of what they do internally for onboarding. So with Nitro Studio, we give you the ability to go in and make changes on your own, or to go in and customize it to make it make sense for your company. So while it does come out of the box a certain way, and that's what I'll be covering today, we do have the option to come in and make changes after the fact. And that's something that you're interested in. Feel free to contact us after the webinar, and we'll be happy to do a personalized demo for you guys, show you how Nitro can be applied to make changes to the onboarding application. Well, with that in mind, I think we're going to jump right into the tool itself. So now we're looking at the onboarding application. Now, this is kind of the first point where I say, hey, don't pay too much attention to the branding, right? Crow Canyon is blue, and our branding are blue and white. Therefore, our demo site is blue and white. Now, from a branding perspective, this is going to match your guys' internal requirements. Whether you have your own CSS or your own color scheme, this is something that can be changed and made to make sense for you. Okay, so we say onboarding. Really, there's three main workflows of this application, and that's onboarding, our new hire request, mid-boarding, change request, or departing staff or termination request. This main landing page gives you the ability to have a nice overview of all of those workflows. So I'll get into the forms in just a minute, but from this page, it just gives us a nice project view. Most of the time an onboard is a project, right? All the tasks that roll up into this one project of bringing this new employee on to the company. So you can see, we can filter through types of requests, onboard versus change versus the offboard. And then as we drill down into each individual project, each individual onboard in this case, you kind of have that yellow light, red light, green light set up here of where are we in the process. This one's pending approval, this is pending an Active Directory task. But if you look at one that's more completed, you can see exactly that, like that project view. Hey, who's coming on? Oh, we're bringing on Pavan. He's going to be an engineering intern. And here are all the tasks associated with bringing Pavan on. Now you can see that each task has an assignee and they're assigned a due date, with also the status available here on the right-hand side. And what's nice about this is that this process is automated. So when we fire off an onboard, these people get automatically assigned the task based on some internal requirements that you define. Hey, who owns what category? Who owns what task? They get assigned. Not only do they get assigned the task, but they also get assigned a due date. So what's nice about the due date is that it keeps them honest in the fact of, or it takes a little bit of the human element out of, hey, this task needs to be due at this time and at this day. From an HR perspective, you don't have to go in and remind someone to make sure that the credit card task is done or the HR task is done, right? It's going to send them automatic notifications on a time cadence of your choosing that, hey, this task needs to be completed. Now they can come in and update the tasks through this. We have a My Task dashboard. We've done some work with customers in the past about updating tasks via email. So everyone's going more towards that mobile-friendly, mobile workspace. Everyone's on their phone, so that's definitely a possibility as well. But let's talk a little bit now about the functionality behind it, specifically the forms associated with these workflows. So these new hire requests, these onboard requests, are task templates. They're a set of tasks based around a specific role, right? So we'll use me as a guinea pig right here. So if I plug in my name, right, now these forms, again, are configurable. If you need to capture more information here, or you want to change the type, you can change the information captured. That's part of that Nitro Studio I was talking about during the intro. And again, I'd be happy to go into more detail there on a more personal demo if you're so inclined. So now we haven't defined any department or role in this form. So now as we scroll through, you can see a few things are selected, but most things are pretty much blank, right? So now, based on a list living in the back end of the site, and we come in here and we select a department, let's say IT, and we apply a role to this, say system admin. Now, as I scroll through, you can see these tasks, these applications are selected based on that role, based on that task template. Physical access hardware as well. Now we all know that some people some titles have different access or different roles based on their particular onboard. Let's say you have an IT admin coming on, but they're going to be particularly responsible for the help desk. So you want to give them owner permissions of the help desk as opposed to contributor or whatever it may be. You have the ability to come in here and add ad hoc tasks as well. So now once you hit save or submit for approval, again, that's going to be up to you guys on how you want that approval workflow to go. But basically you can have it approved if you want, or if you just want to fire off the tasks, we hit save or send for approval. And then we flow right into this project view here where those tasks are created. People are notified via email that they've been assigned a task, and then HR or who's ever running this application has this overview view on the back end. Now, what's nice here is that once the user is added on or onboarded and brought into the system, we also save them as a user in this users list. So this is going to be important for future reference as well from like an auditing perspective. So when we look at like active employees, we should have Pavan here, right? So when we bring Pavan up, we can see like what access he has, what user access or what applications he has access to, what physical access he has. And then we can really drill down into this and say, okay, when was this added? Who added it? So from a auditing perspective, exactly from who authed it, when they authed it, and you can have a nice clean report for this as well. So it gives you a way to track that. I know that's important in a lot of companies that we talk to. Okay, so user in the system, new hire request. Now let's talk about the second step in the process. So we brought them on. Year later, 6 months later, 2 years later, they're going to change roles, they're going to change titles. So that's where the new hire request or change request comes in. So you can see here, very similar project dashboard workspace where these tasks have fired off and they've been assigned to a person, they've been assigned a due date, and from a tracking perspective, you can see where we are in the process. Let's look at the form though. Okay, so now as this form pops up, what's nice here is that, well, we're going to use Pavan because he's saved as a user in our system. What's cool here is that this user filler, I should have brought it up in the onboarding piece, but since we're here, we'll touch on it now. Anytime we're adding a user into the system, anytime we're adding a people picker, you have a lot of options. You could do it from like a SharePoint column, you could do it from SharePoint user groups, you could do it from Active Directory on how you want to populate this person's information into the system. Okay. So we know he's in IT, right? That's automatically populating on his on the way over, with his information. So let's say he's moving from IT admin to IT system admin. Okay. So now as we tab through these across the top, not only are we seeing the applications, right, the ones that he's going to need access to, but we're also going to see the ones being added and being removed or retained. So our new hire request is strictly task template based. Hey, this person's coming on in this position. We're going to fire off the tasks that are equal to this position. The new hire requests are going to look at the previous position versus the new position. Hey, they're moving from this title to this title. What access do they need? What needs to be added? What needs to be removed or retained? So it's smart enough to look at the two roles, levy them against each other, same with hardware, and then fire off that project in the background to make sure that, hey, everyone's being notified. If we need to remove permissions, we send a remove task. We need to update or add permissions on an application. Like I said, if they're going from read only to contributor or owner, admin, whatever it may be, we also have that ability to build it in here. Okay. Now I'm just going to take a side step before I go into departing staff request because I like to touch on this dashboard. So our admin dashboard, it's actually one of my favorites in our applications. We have 9 or 10 applications. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this is one of my favorite workspaces, just from this reporting view on the left-hand side here. So it just gives us a nice overall view of what's going on with all of our requests. So back in this project view, you can see more of you can drill down and look at one specifically, but it doesn't give you a nice overall of what's going on with all of our tasks. So from this view, we can see exactly that, right? Okay, change requests are completed. We're waiting on tasks for onboarding and offboarding. Well, who is responsible for managing those tasks, or who's behind on those tasks, right? And you can see exactly that here, a breakdown, a percentage of what still needs to be completed. And then on the right-hand side, those exact tasks, right? Change request tasks are 100% completed, so we have nothing there. But onboarding and offboarding both have tasks to be completed. So we see the employee, who it's assigned to, and their status. So whereas this project view is a particular onboard, the dashboard gives you an overview of all onboards, right? So you can see all tasks that need to be completed. Okay. Now let's talk about the third workflow in the process, departing staff requests. So new hire request, task template, change request, old role versus new role. Now departing staff request, we need to go in, collect all the, or remove and collect all the assets, applications that person, that role is associated with. So again, we'll use Pavon. His manager's pre-filling, his department and his roles are pre-filling. I think it's loading a little slow here, but that's okay. We'll help it out. So now as we go through, we're going to, hey, this is strictly applications to be removed, right? This is what he has access to, and this is what we need to go and collect. Not only removing them, like I said, from an application standpoint, but what hardware assets do we need to recoup? What physical access do we need to remove? And the employee's last day. What date do we have to do it by? And that's pretty consistent across all of the forms and all of the workflows, quote unquote workflows in the application. It's like, hey, not only can we define it based on a role, these tasks that need to be done, but also by what date. If you need to have these things completed 2 weeks before the person starts, you have that ability to do so. If you need to capture things, before this last date, effective date, before this person's last day, you have the ability to do so, and that's where the due date and the notifications around the due dates are very helpful. In the due date column, or anytime you see a date column, there is the option for multiple workflows there. So not only are we automatically assigning a due date when a task is generated, and that's across all 3 workflows. Like, hey, assign this a due date on this task for the specified date. But you can also do things like notify the task assignee when that date is coming due. Task is due tomorrow, task is due today, right? You can ping them. I always say, you can ping them as aggressively as you choose. I think it's as quickly as every 15 minutes, obviously a little unrealistic, but it's up to you guys on how often you want to send those notifications out. And then the third one is, leveraging some Nitro Studio features. We call conditional formatting. You have the ability to update status columns to say, hey, this has gone overdue. We're going to make it red. We're going to turn the priority high, and we're going to notify a manager. So you do have some flexibility with what you can do from a reporting standpoint. Not reporting, but a notification standpoint. Because a lot of onboarding is time sensitive, right? A lot of things need to be completed within the time frame specified, and we're all busy. We all have our own roles we all have multiple hats that we wear in these roles, and the onboarding may just be a small piece. So building in those notifications, again, takes the human element out of it. You don't have to worry about making sure that this gets done every day. That those notifications are there. They're there to be relied upon, and they're going to be sent to the appropriate person to say, hey, this needs to be done at this time. Okay. So those are the major workflows, right? Those are the three things that we really utilize when we're talking about this onboarding application. I'm just going to take a quick peek at the back end to show you what it looks like from a setup perspective. Close some tabs here. So this is strictly for the admin, for the admin team. This wrench is only available to those folks who are going to have access to this area. It's not for everybody. And you can do things like specify your departments, right? What departments are going to have new hires, those roles, so you can start to build out those task templates. So if we look at, I think it was system admin. Whoop. So from our system admin, this role, we can come in and tweak it, change it, so it's not locked in stone by any means. Here are all the applications that they have access to. We'll probably need, Microsoft Exchange. Well, now we're gonna give them access to Salesforce, right? So you can make changes to these roles on the fly. By no means are they set in stone. They're configurable, and the same goes for the owners of the applications as well. Right, so if someone changes title, again, if we update role or they leave the company, it's something that you can look at to, automatically changing this owner as well. So departments, roles, and then you also have the list for the forms, right? What are we giving access to? What are the tasks associated with? And this is where we start to define those task owners. So the hardware, again, you can come in and you can add more. This is like adding a SharePoint list item, but it reads directly to one of our forms. So you can always come in and add more hardware, physical access, and task types. Hardware tasks, relocation tasks, etc. And then again, the owner of those tasks, who's going to be assigned to those tasks when we're created. The last piece, and I'm not going to spend too much time here, I just like to highlight it, is our Nitro Studio. So again, this is the tool set that makes our applications run. And these are the things that the applications are laid on top of. These are the different little apps and web parts that go into building these applications. So not only the forms, the workflows, the reports, the Power Portal, but all these other little guys that go into it. Conditional formatting, we talked about. You have the ability to print seamlessly from SharePoint, which can be a little bit difficult in SharePoint out of the box. Make a more complex approval process if that's the way your onboarding is set up. So you do have the ability to do those. Now, I won't go into all of it. The one piece I do like to touch on here is our forms tool. That's kind of the flagship because anytime that we interact with SharePoint, it's through a form. So I'm just going to real quickly touch on what it looks like to make a change to a form. So what's nice here, you select the application, this interface pulls up. And what's great about Nitro Forms, or what I find easy about it, is that it actually writes directly to a SharePoint list. You don't have to do any connection after the fact. So you have a drop down of all the lists available in your SharePoint site, and then you select that particular list that you want to work out of. So we're working out of the request list, and that's the one that we're going to edit here. Now, just quick background as this is loading. Nitro Studio became a standalone about a year ago, so you can take it and create your own. But really, what it's done is force us into hyper development on these tools. So where we are now to where we were a year ago is almost night and day. We've added a lot of functionality into all of our tools, specifically our forms piece. So right here, you have an example of that here, right? We're looking at being able to have multiple forms read into one SharePoint list. So not only do we have that new request form, we also have the change request form feeding into the same SharePoint list. So if we want to capture different information, we want the forms to look different than each other, we have the ability to do so. So you can always add new forms, and under the advanced settings, it's really nice, you have the ability to export and import settings for your current list, recreate those forms on the fly. And another feature, I know those folks who are maybe on SharePoint 2019 or SharePoint Online and they want to use the modern experience, we are modern capable as well. So you do have the ability to use those modern forms through Nitro, or use the modern UI through Nitro Studio, sorry. Okay, so we'll come in and edit this. So not only do you have the ability to create multiple forms through your SharePoint list, you also have the ability to have different versions of the form. Those familiar with SharePoint, know that there's a new, an edit, and a display version of all these forms, and you have the ability to design, a form specific to those pieces. And you can do things like have access to the kind of standard SharePoint features from our form designer, being able to create columns on the fly without having to go to the backend site or the site settings, and then being able to access the list settings here as well. And really from the form design perspective, I see it as like a three-tiered process, or three levels, 3 layers of what we can do. First is like UI and UX, design of the form. Second is kind of SharePoint standards, permissions, validations, etc. And then the third is developer-heavy tools. And let's kind of walk through those. So the forms, not only can you change like the tab color, I like the purple. Not only can you change the tab color, but you can also change the background of the tab as well. So if you kind of want to break up that standard SharePoint white look and feel, you can not only change the tabs and the tab colors, but you can also apply your own CSS to the form. So if you have to have a form look and feel a certain way and you have a CSS file that does that, we give you the full power to do so. Now this is a tab layout. We also have section layouts, so it can be more of a drop down, a scrolling form. And then you also have the ability to like make this a line. So if you want to see it, more one long scrolling form, you also have that ability. Other nifty little things like breaking up the, how the columns are laid out within the form. If we want to do a 2-column layout versus a 1-column layout, you can. I think heck, you can even go to 4. A lot of control over how the form looks and feels. Now let's talk about, let's change this back before I forget though. Let's talk a little bit about adding tabs and adding controls. So under the form controls, you have the ability to drag and drop tabs into the form. New tab pops up, you can title it. And then here on the left-hand side, you have all of the columns available in your SharePoint list, right? Now, like I said, you can come and create new columns that will be automatically updated to the form controls. And then when you want to add new columns in, you just drag and drop them, right? Now, once they're there, let me add a couple in here. Once they're there, you can move them around, right? They're not stuck in stone. You can easily WYSIWYG these around. So that's the form design. Color scheme, column breakdown, adding and removing tabs, right? That's all possible. Now that next level is like the SharePoint tools. We can look at permissions, not only on tabs, but also on columns. So you can show and hide tabs or columns based on everyone or users and groups, and then conditions on top of that. So if we want to show, if you have a finance tab and you only want the finance team to have access to it, this is where we would do it. Show finance tab. Oh, hopefully I can spell. There we go. Show finance tab or hide finance tab from everybody, and only show it to that particular group. And then the same goes for columns. Not only do you have the ability to do that on a particular column, so this is a hide column, we're hiding the title, right? You can see we already have one built up here, but you can do it on you can do it on unique conditions as well. So like, hey, if column A, if column A equals this, if approver equals this, show column B. If approver doesn't equal this or begins with this, show column C. So you really have some flexibility to display, or for form display, right? Not only are we determining who can see what tab, but we can also determine what columns show up and when they show up based on, again, your internal requirements and our unique conditions here. Now, the next level down is a little bit more design developer heavy. So we have the ability to drop in like script or submit actions. And this just gives you the ability to, you can plug it anywhere in on the form, top or bottom. I'm just going to throw it in here to show you guys what this looks like. It's basically executing a script function manually, saying, hey, send this for approval. So like we brought this up on the onboarding piece. Like, I mentioned it for the new hire request, this submit for approval. So if that's your process and you need to go down this submit for approval process, once it loads here, you can send for approval, right? This is what it gives you the option to do so, to manually fire off that script. Now under form settings, we have that auto fill user information, so being able to capture the user's info from Active Directory, SharePoint columns, SharePoint user profile. Build up your lookup settings, so columns that are dependent upon a parent column, right? Role applications all rolling up into that main form. And this associated items. So associated items is really cool. It basically gives us the ability to pull up a form within the form that we're in without having to navigate to that other list. We showed an example of ad hoc tasks. So ad hoc tasks is a separate list. It's a separate SharePoint list with its own form. With this associated item settings that we have here, we're able to link those lists together and link those forms together. So when I click on new item, this item is writing completely into its own list, like I said, but it gives you the ability to have it also displayed on the fly in the form that you're in. So when I hit save, not only is it creating the item, but it's also displaying it here. Really nice tool, really handy when it comes to building these forms out and linking multiple lists together. Close this out. And we also have the ability to, connect to external data columns. A lot of people, when we talk about onboarding, talk about duplicate data entry. Being able to connect to external data sources, and absolutely, if you're comfortable setting up a connection to maybe QuickBooks or a third-party ERP system, and you don't want to have to do that duplicate entry, this is the opportunity to do so. We also have the ability in our workflow tool to leverage a Microsoft Flow or a SharePoint Designer workflow. Microsoft's really great in the flow with the flow perspective of connecting to other third-party tools, and that's something that we can leverage. But again, if you'd like to see that in more detail, we're about to run out of time here, so please contact us independently, and I'd be happy to show you that feature. So you can do it in the form. You can also do it via workflow. And this last guy we touched on, we looked at the job CSS already, but we also have the ability to inject custom JavaScript in this form as well, whether as a link or an eval. So the forms piece is a lot. I covered it quickly. I just like to touch on it because it is such an integral piece of what we do in all of our applications, specifically onboarding. But that is that's a wrap. That's our overview of the onboarding tool. If there's any questions, I think we have someone monitoring questions. Scott, was there anything that popped up or anything that we need to cover? Or guys, no. If you want to throw in any questions right now, it'd be the time.
Yeah, no question. Can we see the list? The question just came up.
Sure.
The list. Oh, you mean the SharePoint? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So you can see the SharePoint lists through the App Admin Center. Again, this is you're still going to have access to your kind of standard SharePoint tools, right? So you can still see the site contents, you can see the site settings. But here in the App Admin Center, we actually give you access to the list itself. So like you can see we have the roles list, the hardware list, so you can still come in and make changes to those SharePoint lists. So we pull one up here and we can see that list settings. Now also in the application, we give you lists on the left-hand side here. So you can see all of the lists here. These are independent SharePoint lists that we write into for these tasks. So if you pull one up, you still have access to that SharePoint list.
Right, and that quick launch is configurable too, as far as what lists are there, if you want to add other ones.
Correct.
That's right. And in the modern UI, it looks a little different, but the same kind of idea applies.
What else? What other questions? Did anything else pop in there, Scott?
Can the form handle cascading drop-down lists?
It's a great
Oh, yeah,
question.
of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I have any. I don't know if I have any examples here in onboarding, at least none that pop out. But you know, we have plenty of applications. So if you guys bear with me, I'll show you at Sidestep. Um, so we have something set up similar in like one of our portals for cascading dropdowns, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like. Basically, we're reading an issue type to a category. So when I select category for this particular request, I think it's an IT ticket. Come on. So when I select a category, let's say hardware requests, it's only going to show me the issue type specific to hardware request, right? So keyboard. Now, if I come in and I change my category type, calendar, this issue type's reset, and I can only see calendar-based issue types. So absolutely, great question.
Okay, another one was, does it integrate with FIM? FIM.
I'm not sure what FIM is. Finance management, I think, probably. You know, integrations. So that's a good question. It's a good topic to bring up. When we talk about integrations with other third-party tools, very, very, very possible, right? We don't have any out-of-the-box integrations with our tools, right? If you guys want one, it's something that our team can look at adding for you. You know, looking at building in that integration for you. If you're comfortable building in an integration to SharePoint, it's a SQL backend, you're more than welcome to do so. We're not hiding away any of the SharePoint functionality. And actually, like I mentioned with Microsoft Flow, we want to enhance what SharePoint does natively, or what Microsoft does natively. So if there's already a connection built into that third-party tool through Microsoft Flow, we have the ability to invoke a flow from our workflow tool and leverage that connection that's already been built.
Yeah, that as well as web services we could connect with, and REST API. So there's a lot of integration and connectivity between databases and external systems going on for sure.
Right.
And another question is about column level. Oh, okay. Column level permissions. Of course, we have that in the Forms Manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can limit permissions on tabs, columns. Yeah, and that can be based on users and groups. That can be based on conditions. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can also have those columns show or not show, or the tabs show and not show dynamically.
Correct.
Why? Depend on selections made in the form, as well as who the user is and what group they're in, as well as the action buttons can show or not show. You have a lot of control over what is displayed on the forms according to both permissions, and other choices made on the forms. Like if you choose this value, then another tab shows up, or a set of columns show up, or whatever. So yeah, very much, very much. Now we're finding out that FIM is forefront identity manager.
Okay, I think that integrates with like Active Directory and Exchange Server. So if it does, then theoretically we shouldn't have an issue dealing with it. I don't know if we've done it off the top of my head, or at least I can't think of any. If you don't mind, we'll take this back to the team and we'll reach out to you independently to see if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. It's a
Yeah,
part
I
of
don't.
the
It's
identity management system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the Microsoft space. I mean, and, we're just like we said, we're leveraging Microsoft's platform, so I don't see an issue.
Yeah, I don't either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Okay, can this deal with the send email to external users? Seems SharePoint 2013 can't do it anymore. We have the email manager capability that will send out emails from our system to the external email people. Like we have the email manager in onboarding. Can you see that in onboarding? I know it's in the help desk system quite heavily.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the back end. So Email Manager is one of the apps in the Nitro Studio. And again, just to reiterate, this comes with the application. It's not an additional cost to get Nitro for this particular site. But from our Email Manager tool, you can send these to external recipients. So you can plug in email addresses. It's not specified to just, it looks like I plugged in my Gmail here already, just to prove that it can very much do that, handle that.
Yes, and also the workflows will send to external emails. So if you want to notify somebody based on a certain, items created or task has not been completed in a certain amount of time. Because here's the issue with onboarding, and this is a good point they brought up. Until the person actually has an email account in your system, you're dealing with an external user, like somebody who has a previous email. That's very much part of our onboarding. And Ryan only had 30 minutes, so he didn't show that part. But during the initial onboarding, before the person has the account created, we're communicating with that person on his or her external user account. Whatever it is. That's usually, I don't know, Gmail quite often or something like that, or a previous internal, external, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's an external address. So in the onboarding, there's communication with the incoming user based on the external email address of that user.
Mm-hmm.
You can't send it to the user till he exists, right?
Right. That's something that we've worked with other customers on, that pre-hire tasks, prior to coming onto onboarding and communicating with external users, quote unquote external users. So that's definitely something, again, if they wanted to look at more detail, be happy to reach out and look at that form.
Okay, there's one question about when making changes to lists, that is, for example, change to role title or application packages. So you're going back to your backend list and you're making changes to the packages, to the application package or the role title. How are existing workflows and projects affected? I think what would happen is the next time someone comes on board and you decide it's a system administrator or sales manager or whatever, they would get the new applications and the workflows would operate as they would have anyway, right? I mean,
correct. Yeah, because the workflows are done at the list level. They're not specific to the role title. It's done at like, hey, when this form is saved, fire off the tasks associated with this role, right? So the workflows are saved at list level. So it should have no effect on, existing workflows or projects.
yes. And as you mentioned earlier, Ryan, there's sort of every organization has their own way of doing onboarding. I mean, there's certain general similarities, of course. Someone comes on, they need an account, they need a working equipment, but the way it's done is very variable. And so we made our program very flexible in that way, and we can go into the back end through Nitro Studio forms and workflows and tweak it all you want. We can, or you can, depending on your level of familiarity and comfort with doing that. Quite often an onboarding is, it's pretty close out of the box, but it usually needs some, of course, adjustment with the applications, the roles, and some tweaking to the workflows and things like that. Right, Ryan? That's what you've seen?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I covered the Nitro Studio in a bit more detail, or at least the forms piece, to show you that, hey, it can be flexible, and we can make it make sense for, whatever your situation may be.
Yeah, an important thing is you're managing tasks in this across multiple departments in an organized, sequential way, either parallel or serial kind of sequence of events, right? You have the,
right,
and it's like you said, managing incoming people who are changing jobs, which is we call mid-boarding, and also the people who are leaving, where you need to recover assets, you need to recover. We revert the rights, we withdraw the rights the person had, and other various tasks that are related to, when someone leaves the company.
right. And I think the last bit here, we're just about to run up on our time. Detailed pricing info. I'll reach out to you individually and get you the pricing information. If anyone else has any questions, pricing or product related, we will send a follow-up email with the recording from today. Feel free to to respond to us from that email or reach out to us directly. My information is here. I'd be happy to take any requests. First name dot last name at crowcanyon.com. And yeah, any folks who want to take a more personalized look at the demo or have pricing questions, feel free to reach out to me, or like I said, respond to that email we'll be sending out tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Well, thanks everybody. Yeah, thanks for joining, Scott. Thanks for hanging in and answering questions, and we'll see you guys next time. We do have a webinar coming up on, I believe it's IT Help Desk, about a month from now, so keep eyes out for emails on that as well.
That's right. We have a number of webinars coming up, not just on our applications, but also on our Nitro Studio, as well as workshops. We're going to do an update. We're going to display the updates on June 27th. We have a webinar, June 27th, a week from today, right? Yeah, a week from today.
Yeah,
No,
from today.
or 2
No,
weeks.
no, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. Sorry. That's on a Nitro updates. We have a lot of cool updates to Nitro Studio, especially the Forms Designer. Ryan showed you some of that, but we'll go into much more detail on a couple of weeks to really show you what the Forms Designer, the new features, what it has in it. And we're always improving and enhancing Nitro Studio and therefore our application. So we have a number of events, webinars coming up like that, and hopefully stay in touch and learn more about it and go from there.
Perfect.
All
Thanks,
right.
Scott. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay.